Close your eyes for a moment and imagine you're standing on a lonely, cobblestone path in the heart of 1930s England. It's a cold, foggy night in a village called the Hollow, where the air feels heavy with secrets and the mist curls around. You like a living thing. The faint glow of lamplights barely cuts through the haze, casting eerie shadows on the ivy-covered cottages and the towering silhouette of Ashbourne Manor. You hear the distant toll of a church bell, mournful and slow, and then silence. But it's not a peaceful quiet. It's the kind that makes your skin prickle, as if the village itself is holding its breath. Suddenly, a scream rips through the fog, sharp and desperate, before it's swallowed by the night. Your heart pounds. As you strain to see through the mist, catching a fleeting glimpse of a shadow too quick, too ghostly to be sure. Then a voice, calm and precise, cuts through the tension. Mon ami. There is a darkness here that demands the light of truth. That voice belongs to Hercule Poirot, the legendary Belgian detective with a mind as sharp as his meticulously groomed mustache. Welcome to Poirot vs. The Phantom Killer, the Hollow's Darkest Secrets. A sprawling, spine-chilling mystery that will pull you into a world of murder, deception, and unrelenting suspense. This isn't just a story, it's a journey through a village unraveling under the weight of its own secrets. And you're invited to walk alongside Poirot as he faces a killer who strikes like a phantom. So, grab a cozy blanket, maybe a cup of tea, and settle in for a tale that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. If you're as excited as I am, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and let's dive into this epic 10-chapter saga. The Hollow was the kind of village that seemed plucked from a storybook, a place where time moved slowly and life was predictable. Nestled in the rolling hills of the English countryside was a patchwork of charm, thatched roof cottages with flower boxes bursting with color, a stone bridge arching over a gentle brook, and a village square where locals gathered to gossip over fresh-baked bread and pints of ale. The church, with its weathered steeple and ancient graveyard, stood as a quiet sentinel, while Ashbourne Manor, the grandest home in the Hollow, loomed over the landscape like a proud patriarch. The manor's owner, Lady Margaret Ashbourne, was the village's unofficial queen, her family's wealth and influence woven into the Hollow's history for centuries. Children played in the meadows, farmers tended their fields, and the postman made his rounds with a cheery wave. It was the kind of place where doors were left unlocked and neighbors were more like family. But all that changed 3 weeks ago, when a shadow fell over the Hollow, a shadow that brought with it a name whispered in fear, the Phantom Killer. It began with Eliza Marwood, 22-year-old, with a smile that could light up the gloomiest day. Eliza worked at Mrs. Penny's bakery, her hands always dusted with flour, her laughter a fixture in the village square. She was the kind of girl who knew everyone, who'd slip an extra scone to a hungry child or share a kind word with a weary traveler. One foggy night, Eliza didn't come home. Her mother, frantic, alerted the village, and by dawn, a search party found her in Blackthorn Woods, a dense tangle of trees on the edge of the Hollow. Eliza lay on a bed of fallen leaves, her eyes closed as if in sleep, her skin pale as moonlight. There were no signs of violence, no bruises, no cuts, no sign of a struggle. Just a single white rose, its petals pristine, tucked into her folded hands. The village doctor, Dr. Harrow, examined her and declared it a heart attack, his voice clipped and professional. A tragedy, he said, but these things happen. The police, led by Inspector Caldwell, a gruff man with little patience for mystery, agreed. The rose, they said, was likely a prank or a coincidence. The Hollow mourned, laying flowers at Eliza's grave, but they tried to move on, convincing themselves it was a one-off tragedy. Then, 10 days later, it happened again. Mr. Grayson, a retired schoolmaster in his late 60s, was found dead in his garden, surrounded by the dahlias he'd tended with such care. Grayson was a village fixture, known for his love of poetry and his habit of reciting Shakespeare to anyone who'd listen. His body was discovered at dawn by his neighbor, Mrs. Tuttle, who'd come to borrow a gardening trowel. Like Eliza, Grayson showed no signs of foul play, no wounds, no marks, just that same eerie white rose placed in his hand. calm, almost serene, as if he'd simply lain down to rest and never woken up. The village's grief turned to unease, to deaths, 2 roses, and no answers. Inspector Caldwell stuck to his story. Natural causes, perhaps a coincidence. Villagers weren't so sure. Whispers began to spread tales of a curse, a ghost, a killer who moved unseen. The pub, once a place of laughter, became a hub of hushed theories. With locals glancing over their shoulders as they spoke, the third death shattered any remaining hope that the hollow was safe. Thomas Reed, a traveling merchant who'd arrived only a week earlier, was found in an alley behind the Rose and Crown. And Reed was a jovial man, quick with a story and a deal, his cart filled with trinkets and fabrics from distant towns. He'd been popular, buying rounds at the pub and charming the locals with his tales of adventure. But one morning, the innkeeper found him slumped against the alley wall, his eyes wide open, staring into the fog. Again, no wounds, no struggle, just the white rose, this time pinned to his coat like a grim calling card. By now, the hollow was in chaos. Families kept their children indoors, shops closed early, and the once bustling village square felt like a ghost town. The white rose had become a symbol of terror, and the name Phantom Killer was on every tongue. The police were stumped, their investigations leading nowhere. Inspector Caldwell muttered about mass hysteria, but the villagers knew better. Something or someone was hunting them. Desperate for help, Lady Margaret Ashbourne took matters into her own hands. She'd known Hercule Poirot from years ago, when he'd solved a theft at her London townhouse with such finesse that she'd never forgotten him. Her letter to Poirot was a plea written in the elegant but trembling script of a woman on edge. "Monsieur Poirot, our village is cursed. The killer stalks us, leaving death and roses in their wake. Only your little gray cells can save us." Poirot, whose love for a challenge was matched only by his love for order, couldn't resist. He arrived in the hollow on a rainy afternoon, stepping off the train with his polished shoes and immaculate suit, a figure of calm amidst the storm. The villagers gathered at the station, their faces a mix of hope, curiosity, and doubt. This small, dapper man with his egg-shaped head and twirling mustache was their savior? Poirot, sensing their skepticism, offered a small, confident smile. "Mes amis," he said, his Belgian accent crisp. "Where there is mystery, there is always a solution. In Hercule Poirot, he finds solutions." Poirot's first stop was Ashbourne Manor, a sprawling estate with ivy-covered walls and windows that gleamed like watchful eyes. Margaret greeted him in the drawing room, her hand shaking as she poured sherry from a decanter that gleamed. In the firelight, over the crackle of the hearth, she poured out the village's story, the 3 deaths, the white roses, the fear that had gripped the hollow like a vice. She spoke of Eliza's youth and promise, Grayson's gentle wisdom, and Reed's fleeting presence. Each loss a wound to the village's heart. Poirot listened intently, his green eyes sharp, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. "Madame," he said at last, "this is no curse, no phantom. A killer who leaves a rose is a person with a purpose, and purpose always betrays itself." He requested to see the crime scenes, meet the villagers, and examine any evidence the police had overlooked. Lady Margaret, relieved to have someone take charge, arranged for Poirot to stay at the manor and promised to introduce him to key figures in the village. Poirot's investigation began with a visit to Blackthorn Woods, where Eliza's body had been found. The woods were dense and shadowy, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and pine. Poirot moved carefully, his eyes scanning the ground for clues the police might have missed. He noted the way the leaves had been disturbed around Eliza's body. It's not scattered as if by a struggle, but arranged, almost deliberately. At Mr. Grayson's garden, he observed the same meticulous staging. The body positioned just so, the rose placed with care. The alley behind the Rose and Crown was trickier, its cobblestones slick with rain, but Poirot found a single scuff mark in the dirt. A faint trace the police had ignored. "Ha," he murmured, "the phantom is not so ghostly." After all, back in the village, he began to interview the locals, each conversation a piece of the puzzle. The butcher, Mr. Hale, a burly man with a nervous twitch, swore he'd seen a cloaked figure slipping into the woods at dusk, though he couldn't describe them. Reverend Poole, the vicar, spoke of divine judgment, his voice trembling with conviction. At the Rose and Crown, the innkeeper, Mrs. Doyle, shared rumors of a secret society, though she admitted it was just pub talk. Poirot's most promising lead came from Clara Winters, Eliza's best friend and fellow baker. Clara met him at the bakery, her hands fidgeting as she kneaded dough. She was a slight girl, with dark curls and eyes that darted to the door every few seconds. Over the hum of the oven, she confessed that Eliza had been acting strange before her death. She'd sneak out at night, Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. Said she was meeting someone, a secret admirer. She got notes, handwritten, but she wouldn't show them to me. I told her to be careful, but she just laughed. Poirot's mustache twitched, a sure sign his mind was racing. Notes, mademoiselle. And where are these notes now? Clara shook her head, tears welling. She kept them in a box under her bed, but when her mother looked, they were gone. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. A secret admirer, notes that vanished. This was no random killer. This was someone who knew their victims, someone close. By the end of his first day, Poirot had a list of suspects, each with their own shadows to hide. There was Clara, whose nervous demeanor suggested she knew more than she let on. Dr. Harrow, the village physician, had declared all 3 deaths natural with a certainty that struck Poirot as owed to why was he so quick to dismiss. Foul play? And then there was Julian Ashbourne, Lady Margaret's nephew. A charming young man with a reputation for gambling and a heated argument with Eliza just days before her death. The village was a tapestry of secrets, and Poirot was determined to unravel it thread by thread. "It's a little gray cells," he said, tapping his temple as he stood in the manor's library. They are already at work. The phantom killer believes he is clever, but no one outsmarts Hercule Poirot. What lies ahead for our intrepid detective? The Hollow is a village on edge, its residents haunted by the specter of a killer who leaves no trace but a rose. The chapters to come will follow Poirot as he digs deeper into the lives of the villagers, curds motives buried in the past, and chases a truth that grows more elusive with every step. Can he unmask the phantom killer before another white rose falls, or will the Hollow's secrets prove too dark even for Poirot's brilliant mind? Stay with us for Chapter 2, where Poirot uncovers a shocking clue that turns the case on its head. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Who do you think the phantom killer is? What's the significance of the white roses? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to catch every twist in Poirot versus the phantom killer. See you in the next chapter, where the mystery takes a dangerous turn. The Hollow woke to another gray morning, the kind where the sky seemed to press down on the village, heavy with the promise of rain. The air was thick with unease, as if the fog itself carried the weight of the phantom killer's shadow. In the village square, the usual bustle of market stalls and cheerful greetings had been replaced by hurried glances and whispered conversations. The bakery, once alive with the scent of fresh bread and Eliza Marwood's laughter, now felt like a hollow shell, its windows dim and its counters sparsely stocked. The Rose and Crown Inn, where Thomas Reed had met his end, had lost its warmth, its patrons nursing their pints in silence. Even the church, with its ancient stone walls, seemed less a place of solace and more a reminder of the graves that now held 3 of the Hollow's own. The white rose, once a symbol of beauty in the village's gardens, had become a mark of death, and the villagers moved through their days like actors in a play they didn't understand. But Hercule Poirot, ensconced in the grand library of Ashbourne Manor, was no mere spectator. His sharp green eyes gleamed with purpose, his mind already weaving the first threads of the mystery into a pattern only he could see. "The phantom killer," he murmured to himself, sipping a cup of tisane. "He is no ghost. He is a man, and men, they leave footprints." Poirot's first day in the Hollow had given him a glimpse of the village's underbelly, a tangle of secrets, half-truths, and hidden motives. The 3 deaths, Eliza Marwood, Mr. Grayson, and Thomas Reed, shared an eerie consistency. No visible cause, no struggle, and always that chilling white rose. But it was Clara Winter's revelation about Eliza's secret admirer, and the missing notes that had set Poirot's little gray cells buzzing. Notes suggested intimacy, a connection between killer and victim, and their disappearance pointed to someone covering their tracks. Poirot decided to begin his second day by diving deeper into the lives of the victims, starting with Eliza. He donned his immaculate coat, adjusted his hat to a precise angle, and set out for the Marwood cottage, a modest home on the edge of the village where Eliza had lived with her widowed mother, Mrs. Beatrice Marwood. The cottage was small but tidy, its garden overgrown with wildflowers, testament to Eliza's love for beauty. Mrs. Marwood, a frail woman with eyes red from grief, welcomed Poirot with a weary nod. "I don't know what you hope to find, monsieur," she said, her voice cracking. "My Eliza was a good girl. She didn't deserve this." Inside, the cottage was a shrine to Eliza's memory. Photographs lined the mantel, showing a smiling girl with curls tumbling over her shoulders, her arms around friends or holding a basket of freshly baked rolls. Poirot's eyes lingered on a photo of Eliza with Clara Winters, their faces bright with youth. "Madame," he said gently, "your daughter, she spoke of a secret admirer. We—" Clara mentioned notes. "May I see where she kept them?" Mrs. Marwood led him to Eliza's bedroom, a small space with a quilted bed and a wooden box under the mattress. The box was empty, just as Clara had said, but Poirot noticed something the others had missed, a faint indentation in the wood, as if something heavy had been pressed against it. A book, perhaps, he mused aloud, or a diary. Mrs. Marwood shook her head. "Eliza didn't keep a diary, just those notes, and they're gone." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Gone, madame, but not forgotten. The absence of evidence. It is evidence itself." From the Marwood cottage, Poirot made his way to the bakery, where Clara Winters was kneading dough with a fervor that spoke of nervous energy. The bakery was quiet, its usual crowd thinned by fear, and Clara's hands trembled as she worked. Poirot, ever the gentleman, complimented the aroma of fresh bread before steering the conversation to Eliza. "Mademoiselle Clara, you were her confidant. We? Tell me more of this secret admirer. What did Eliza say?" Clara's eyes darted to the door, as if expecting someone to burst in. "She was excited at first," Clara said, her voice low. "Said he was someone important, someone who noticed her. But the last few days, she seemed scared, said the notes were getting strange, demanding she'll meet him alone." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "And did she meet this person?" Clara hesitated, then nodded. "The night she died, she said she was going to the woods to end it, whatever it was. I begged her not to go, but she wouldn't listen." Poirot's mind raced. A lover's tryst turned deadly, or something more sinister. Next, Poirot visited the garden where Mr. Grayson had been found. The old schoolmaster's home was a stone's throw from the church, its backyard a riot of color despite the season. The dahlias, Grayson's pride and joy, stood tall. But Poirot's attention was drawn to the spot where the body had lain. The police had trampled the scene, but Poirot, with his meticulous eye, noticed a patch of earth that seemed to smooth, as if raked to cover something. Kneeling, he sifted through the soil and found a tiny fragment of paper, no bigger than a postage stamp, with a single word scrawled in elegant script: "Forgive." "Ah!" Poirot slipped the fragment into an envelope, his expression unreadable. Message from the killer, perhaps, he said to himself, or a clue left by the victim. The alley behind the Rose and Crown, where Thomas Reed had died, offered less a scuff mark. A discarded cigarette butt, nothing conclusive, but Poirot was undeterred. The smallest detail, he often said, can unlock the greatest mystery. Back at Ashbourne Manor, Poirot spread his notes across a mahogany table, sketching connections in his mind. The victims seemed unconnected. Eliza, a local girl. Grayson, a retired scholar. Red, a transient merchant. Yet the white roses and the absence of violence suggested a single hand at work. Poirot's suspects were taking shape. Clara Winters, with her nervous demeanor and insider knowledge, was hiding something: guilt, fear, or both. Dr. Harrow, the physician, troubled Poirot most. A man of science, Harrow had examined all three bodies and declared them natural deaths. Yet his calm certainty felt rehearsed. Why was he so quick to dismiss foul play? Then there was Julian Ashbourne, Lady Margaret's nephew, a handsome man. In his late 20s, with a reputation for charm and trouble, villagers whispered that Julian had argued with Eliza at the bakery, his voice raised, her face pale. When Poirot questioned Lady Margaret about her nephew, she grew defensive. Julian is a good boy, she insisted. Just restless. He wouldn't harm anyone. But Poirot wasn't so sure. Restless young men, he knew, could be dangerous. To deepen his understanding, Poirot spent the evening at the Rose and Crown, blending into the crowd with surprising ease for a man in a tailored suit. The pub was a microcosm of the Hollows. Fear its patrons huddled over their drinks, trading stories of the phantom killer. The butcher, Mr. Hale, recounted his sighting of a cloaked figure near Blackthorn Woods. His voice loud with bravado, but his hands shaking. Mrs. Doyle, the innkeeper, spoke of Thomas Reed's last night. How he'd seemed jumpy, checking the windows as if expecting trouble. The vicar, Reverend Poole, sat in a corner, muttering about divine retribution for the village's sins. A theory Poirot dismissed with a polite smile. The Almighty, he said, does not leave roses. But the pub's chatter gave Poirot a new lead. Reed had been asking about a local legend. The White Lady, a ghost, said to haunt Blackthorn Woods, was the killer playing on this myth, using it to mask their crimes? As night fell, Poirot returned to Ashbourne Manor, his mind a whirl of clues and questions. The fragment of paper with "forgive" was a tantalizing puzzle piece. Was it a plea from the killer, a taunt, or something else entirely? The missing notes from Eliza's box suggested someone had been in her room after her death, someone with access. And the cloaked figurine or a villager's tale spun from fear? Poirot sat by the fire, his tisane cooling, and reviewed his suspects. Clara's fear could be that of a witness or an accomplice. Dr. Harrow's expertise made him a candidate for a killer who left no marks. Julian's argument with Eliza hinted at a personal motive, perhaps tied to the secret admirer. And then there was the village itself, its idyllic facade hiding a current of secrets. The hollow, Poirot mused, it is not so hollow after all it is full of lies. The chapter closes with Poirot at a crossroads. The phantom killer has struck 3 times, each death a carefully staged tableau, each rose a mocking signature. The villagers are watching, waiting for another body to fall, and Poirot knows time is short. In the chapters ahead, he'll delve into the pasts of his suspects, uncover a connection between the victims, and face a twist that threatens to unravel his theories. Can Poirot's little gray cells outwit a killer who moves like a shadow, or will the hollow claim another victim? Stay tuned for Chapter 3, where a hidden letter changes everything, and the phantom's mask begins to slip. What do you think the word forgive means? Is Clara a victim or a suspect? Drop your theories in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to follow every twist in Poirot vs. the Phantom Killer. See you in the next chapter, where the stakes get higher and the shadows deeper. The hollows seem to hunker down under the weight of another dreary dawn. The kind where the sun barely dared to peek through the heavy clouds, casting the village in a pall of gray. The cobblestone streets were slick with morning dew, and the air carried the faint scent of wood smoke from chimneys, struggling to warm anxious homes. In the village square, the market stalls stood half empty, their vendors casting wary glances at passers-by, as if anyone could be the phantom killer. The church bell tolled, its mournful clang echoing over rooftops, a reminder of the 3 graves now etched with the names of Eliza Marwood, Mr. Grayson, and Thomas Reed. The white rose, once a symbol of the Hollow's blooming gardens, had become a harbinger of death, and the villagers moved like ghosts themselves, their eyes darting to shadows, their voices hushed with fear. But in the grand library of Ashbourne Manor, Hercule Poirot sat undaunted, his polished shoes gleaming in the firelight, his mustache perfectly symmetrical. Before him lay a notebook filled with meticulous notes, a map of the village marked with crime scenes, and the tiny fragment of paper bearing the word forgive. The phantom, Poirot said to himself. Twirling a pencil, he plays a game, but Poirot, he plays to win. Poirot's second day in the Hollow had deepened the mystery. The fragment of paper found in Mr. Grayson's garden was a tantalizing clue, but it raised more questions than answers. Was forgive a message from the killer, a plea from the victim, or something else entirely? Clara Winter's story of Eliza's secret admirer and the missing notes pointed to a personal connection, while the cloaked figure spotted by the butcher hinted at a killer who thrived in the shadows. Poirot suspects Clara, Dr. Harrow, and Julian Ashbourne each carried their own secrets, but none had yet revealed the key to the puzzle. Determined to find it, Poirot set out on his third day with a renewed sense of purpose. The truth, he told Lady Margaret over breakfast, it hides in the details, and today we shall uncover more. Lady Margaret, her face pale but resolute, nodded. Monsieur Poirot, the village is counting on you. Cannot lose another soul. Poirot gave a small bow. Fear not, madame. The little grey cells, they are never idle. His first stop was the village church, a stone edifice with stained glass windows that cast colored light across the pews. Reverend Poole, the vicar, was sweeping the steps. His gaunt frame stooped with the weight of his duties. Poirot had dismissed the Reverend's talk of divine retribution, but he hadn't ruled out the man's knowledge of the village's undercurrents. Reverend Poirot began, his voice polite but firm. You know the Hollow's heart. Tell me, who might wish to punish its people. The vicar's eyes flickered with unease. Punish no one, monsieur. But there are sins here, as in any village. Old grudges, hidden affairs. He hesitated, then lowered his voice. Eliza was a good girl, but she'd been seen with Julian Ashbourne, arguing in the square. And Mr. Grayson, he was writing something before he died, a memoir, he called it. Said it would set things right. Poirot's eyebrows rose. A memoir? This was new. And where is this memoir now? The vicar shook his head. Gone. I assume his house was searched after his death, but nothing was found. Poirot thanked him, his mind already racing. A missing memoir, like Eliza's missing notes, another piece of the puzzle stolen. From the church, Poirot headed to Mr. Grayson's cottage, a quaint home surrounded by the dahlias that had been his pride. The garden was still vibrant, but the house felt lifeless, its windows dark, its air heavy with absence. Mrs. Tuttle, the neighbor who'd found Grayson's body, let Poirot in, her hands wringing a handkerchief. It's not right, monsieur, she said, her voice trembling. Mr. Grayson was kind, always reading his poems to me. Why would anyone hurt him? Poirot patted her arm, his manner soothing. Madame, I seek the why, and I shall find it. He searched the cottage, noting the tidy bookshelves. What? The desk cluttered with papers, and a typewriter with a half-finished page. Most of the papers were lesson plans from Grayson's teaching days, but under a stack of poetry books, Poirot found a locked drawer. With Mrs. Tuttle's permission, he pried it open, revealing a single sheet of paper, not a memoir, but a letter written in Grayson's elegant hand. The letter was addressed to my dear friend and spoke of regret. I should have spoken sooner, but fear held my tongue. The truth about that night must be told, or the shadows will never lift. The letter was unsigned, unfinished, and maddeningly vague, but Poirot's pulse quickened. What night? He murmured. What night? The letter was a breakthrough, but it deepened the mystery. Grayson had known something worth killing for. Poirot tucked the letter into his pocket, determined to uncover its meaning. His next stop was Dr. Harrow's surgery, a small building near the village square. Dr. Harrow was a tall man with a stern face and hands that seemed too steady for a village under siege. He greeted Poirot with a curt nod, his office sterile and orderly, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Monsieur Poirot, he said, I've told the police all I know. The deaths were natural heart failure, perhaps a toxin, but no signs of violence. Poirot tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. No signs, doctor? Or no signs you chose to see? Harrow bristled, but Poirot pressed on. You examined all 3 bodies. Did you find nothing unusual? No trace of this toxin. Poirot hesitated, then admitted there was a faint scent on Eliza's body, like almonds, but it was fleeting. I thought nothing of it. Poirot's mustache twitched.
Almonds, sir?
Classic sign of cyanide. And the roses, doctor? Did they carry this scent? Harrow shook his head, but his unease was palpable. Poirot left the surgery with a new suspicion. Harrow was either incompetent or hiding something. The afternoon found Poirot at the Rose and Crown, where the innkeeper, Mrs. Doyle, was polishing glasses with a vigor born of nerves. The pub was quieter than ever, its patrons huddled in corners, their voices low. Poirot ordered a lemonade alcohol, he said, dulled the mind and listened to the gossip. Mrs. Doyle, eager to help, shared a tidbit about Thomas Reed. He was asking about the White Lady, she said, referring to the local legend of a ghostly figure said to haunt Blackthorn Woods. Said he'd heard she was tied to a scandal years ago, something about the Ashbourne family. Poirot's interest piqued. A scandal? He pressed her for details, but Mrs. Doyle knew little. Only that the White Lady was said to appear when the village was out of balance. The story intrigued Poirot, not for its supernatural bent, but for what it suggested about the Hollow's past. Was the killer using the legend to sow fear? Or was there a real connection to the Ashbournes? Back at Ashbourne Manor, Poirot confronted Julian Ashbourne, Lady Margaret's nephew.
Oh.
Wellard, I go where? Striking young man with dark hair and a smile that could charm the birds from the trees. But his eyes were guarded, and his hands fidgeted as Poirot questioned him. I barely knew Eliza, Julian insisted, his voice smooth but strained. We argued yes, but it was nothing, just a misunderstanding about a delivery to the manor. Poirot raised an eyebrow. A delivery, monsieur? Something more personal. Julian flushed, his charm faltering. But Poirot had seen enough to know Julian was lying. The argument, the missing notes, the memoir, the White Lady legend all pointed to a secret buried in the Hollow's past, one that Julian might know more about than he let on. As evening fell, Poirot sat in the manor's library, the fire casting. Shadows on the walls. He spread out his clues. The fragment with forgive, Grayson's cryptic letter, the almond scent, the White Lady legend. The pieces were coming together, but the picture was still incomplete. The killer was meticulous, choosing victims with care, staging their deaths with a theatrical flair. But why? Revenge? Jealousy? Or something deeper, tied to the night Grayson had mentioned? Poirot's suspects were sharpening in focus. Clara, with her knowledge of Eliza's admirer, might be a witness or an accomplice, Dr. Harrows. Dismissal of the almond scent suggested either negligence or complicity. Julian's evasiveness hinted at a personal stake, perhaps tied to the Ashbourne family's history. And the village itself, with its whispers of scandal, held the key to the killer's motive. The chapter closes with Poirot staring into the fire, his mind a whirlwind of connections. The phantom killer has struck 3 times, each death a carefully crafted message, each rose a taunt. The Hollow is a village on the brink, its residents paralyzed by fear, and Poirot knows the clock is ticking. In the chapters to come, he'll uncover a link between the victims, delve into the Ashbourne family's past, and face a revelation that shakes his confidence. Can Poirot unravel the mystery before the phantom claims another life, or will the Hollow's secrets bury him too? Stay tuned for Chapter 4, where a forgotten diary surfaces and the truth draws closer. What do you think Grayson's letter means? Is Julian hiding a scandal, or is he the killer himself? Drop your theories in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to catch every twist in Poirot versus the Phantom Killer. See you in the next chapter, where the shadows part to reveal a shocking truth. The hollow seemed to shrink under the weight of another oppressive morning. The sky a bruised canvas of clouds that refused to part. The village, once a tapestry of charm with its thatched cottages and blooming gardens, now felt like a stage set for a tragedy. The cobblestone lanes, slick with drizzle, reflected the dim glow of lanterns, and the air carried a chill that seeped into the bones. In the village square, the market stalls stood nearly abandoned, their vendors huddled under awnings, whispering about the Phantom Killer as if speaking his name too loudly might summon him. The church, with its ancient steeple piercing the fog, told a single mournful note, a reminder of the 3 lives lost to Eliza Marwood, Mr. Grayson, and Thomas Reed each, marked by a white rose that had turned the hollow's beauty into a symbol of dread. The Rose and Crown Inn, once the heart of village gossip, was a shadow of itself, its windows fogged, its patrons silent. But in the grand drawing-room of Ashbourne Manor, Hercule Poirot sat with a cup of steaming tisane, his green eyes sharp. As ever, his mustache a perfect arc of determination. Before him lay his growing collection of clues, the fragment with "Forgive," Mr. Grayson's cryptic letter, the faint omen sent on Eliza's body, and whispers of the White Lady legend. "The Phantom," Poirot murmured, his voice a quiet challenge. "He thinks he is invisible." But to Poirot, no one is invisible. Poirot's third day in the hollow had tightened the web of suspicion. The letter found in Mr. Grayson's desk, with its talk of that night and a truth that needed telling, hinted at a secret worth killing for. The almond sent a possible trace of cyanide, suggested a killer with knowledge and precision, while the White Lady legend pointed to a scandal buried in the village's past, perhaps tied to the Ashbourne family. Poirot suspects Clara Winters, Dr. Harrow, and Julian Ashburnitch held pieces of the puzzle, but none had yet revealed the full picture. Clara's nervous account of Eliza's secret admirer suggested she knew more than she admitted. Dr. Harrow's dismissal of the almond scent raised questions about his competence or honesty. Julian's evasive charm and his argument with Eliza hinted at a personal motive, possibly linked to the Ashbourne legacy. But it was the missing notes from Eliza's box and the absent memoir of Mr. Grayson that gnawed at Poirot. Someone was erasing evidence, and Poirot was determined to find out who. His 4th day began with a visit to the Marwood cottage, where Eliza's mother, Mrs. Beatrice Marwood, was tending a small fire in the hearth. The cottage, with its faded curtains and wildflower garden, felt frozen in time. A monument to a daughter lost too soon. Mrs. Marwood's eyes were hollow as she greeted Poirot, but she offered him tea, her hands trembling as she poured. "Monsieur?" "Poirot?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I keep thinking I'll hear Eliza's laugh again, but it's so quiet now." Poirot, ever gentle with those in grief, patted her hand. "Madame, your daughter's voice will speak through the truth we uncover. Tell me, did Eliza ever mention a diary, perhaps separate from those notes?" Mrs. Marwood frowned, then nodded slowly. "She had a little book, a gift from her father before he passed. She used to write in it, but I haven't seen it since." Since she was taken, Poirot's pulse quickened. A diary could hold the key to the secret admirer, the notes, even the killer. "May I search her room again, madame?" Mrs. Marwood agreed, leading him to Eliza's small bedroom. The room was as Poirot remembered, a quilted bed. A wooden box now empty of notes and photographs of Eliza's smiling face. But this time, Poirot's meticulous eye caught something. Knew a loose floorboard under the rug, barely noticeable. With Mrs. Marwood's permission, he pried it up, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a slim, leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed but intact. Poirot's heart raced as he opened it, finding Eliza's neat handwriting spilling across the pages. The entries began innocently, detailing village life, her work at the bakery, her dreams of seeing London. But as Poirot read on, the tone shifted. "He watches me," Eliza wrote, "always leaving notes, always knowing where I am. I thought it was romantic, but now I'm scared." The final entry, dated the night of her death, was chilling. "I'm Meeting him tonight in the woods. I have to tell him to stop, or I'll tell everyone. I know who he is. Poirot closed the diary, his mind ablaze. Eliza had known her killer's identity, and that knowledge had cost her life. Armed with the diary, Poirot headed to the bakery to confront Clara Winters. The bakery was nearly empty, its warmth dimmed, and Clara was alone, her hands kneading dough with mechanical precision. When Poirot showed her the diary, her face paled. "Mademoiselle," he said, his voice firm but kind, "Eliza knew her admirer, and you know more than you have told. Speak, or the phantom will strike again." Clara's eyes filled with tears.
I do want to get involved.
"Eliza told me it was someone from the manor, someone important. She wouldn't say who, but she was terrified. The last note, it threatened her. Said she'd regret talking." Poirot pressed her further, but Clara swore she knew no more, her fear genuine. "I should have stopped her," she sobbed. Poirot patted her shoulder, his mind already turning to Ashbourne Manor. Someone important. From the manor, Julian, or perhaps another? Next, Poirot visited Dr. Harrow's surgery, determined to probe the almond scent. The doctor was examining a patient, but he dismissed them to speak with Poirot, his stern face betraying a flicker of unease. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, "I've told you, the deaths were natural. No poison, no wounds." Poirot tilted his head, his gaze piercing. "And yet, doctor, you noted an almond scent on Eliza. Cyanide. It has such a signature. Did you test for it?" Harrow's jaw tightened. "I had no equipment for such tests. The scent was faint, likely nothing. Mile will." Poirot's smile was polite but cold. "Nothing, doctor? Or something you chose not to pursue?" Harrow's silence was answer enough, and Poirot left with a growing suspicion. Harrow was either negligent or protecting someone. The afternoon took Poirot to Blackthorn Woods, where Eliza's body had been found. The woods were a labyrinth of shadows, the trees leaning inward as if guarding secrets. Poirot retraced the path Eliza might have taken, noting the soft earth, the way branches snapped at precise intervals, as if someone had moved with purpose. Near the spot where Eliza was found, he discovered a faint indentation in the soil, shaped like a small vial. "Aha," Poirot murmured, "the phantom is not so careful." He pocketed a sample of the soil, suspecting it might hold traces of poison. The woods, with their connection to the White Lady legend, felt like the heart of the mystery. Was the killer using the legend to mask their crimes, or was the scandal it referenced the motive itself? Back at Ashbourne Manor, Poirot sought out Julian Ashbourne, who was lounging in the garden, a glass of brandy in hand. Julian's charm was effortless, but his eyes were wary as Poirot approached. "Monsieur Julian," Poirot said, "Eliza's diary speaks of a man from the manor, a man who frightened her. Your argument with her, it was no mere misunderstanding, was it?" Julian's smile faltered. "It was nothing, Poirot. She was upset about a delivery mix-up, that's all." But his voice lacked conviction, and Poirot pressed harder. "A mix-up, monsieur? Or a secret she threatened to expose?" Julian stood. Abruptly, his face flushed. "You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot. I'm no killer." But as he stormed off, Poirot noted the tremor in his hands. Julian was hiding something, and Poirot would find it. That evening, Poirot dined with Lady Margaret, who was growing increasingly anxious. Over a meal of roast pheasant, she spoke of the village's history, hinting at a scandal from 20 years ago, a young woman, an Ashbourne, who vanished after a forbidden affair. The White Lady legend, she admitted, stemmed from that tragedy. "It's just a story," she said, but her eyes avoided Poirot's. He didn't press her, but the pieces were aligning. A scandal, a secret admirer, a killer erasing evidence. The diary was the key, its final entry a direct challenge to the phantom. Whoever Eliza had met that night was the killer, and they were close perhaps within the walls of the manor itself. As night fell, Poirot sat in the library, the diary open before him, its pages whispering Eliza's fears. The clues were mounting: the almond scent, the vial's imprint, Grayson's letter, the White Lady scandal. The killer was no phantom, but a calculated mind, targeting those who knew too much. Clara's fear, Harrow's evasions, Julian's lies all, pointed to a conspiracy rooted in the Hollow's past. Poirot's suspects were clearer now, but the motive remained elusive. Was it revenge for an old wrong? A cover-up of a family secret? Or something more personal, tied to Eliza's admirer? The little gray cells, Poirot said, tapping his temple. They see the pattern, but the final stitch is missing. Chapter closes with Poirot staring into the fire, the diary's words echoing in his mind. The phantom killer has claimed 3 lives, each death a meticulously staged act, each rose a taunt to the living. The Hollow is unraveling, its residents gripped by terror, and Poirot knows the next strike is coming. In the chapters ahead, he'll uncover a connection between the victims, confront a betrayal within the manor, and face a twist that tests his genius. Can Poirot unmask the phantom before another rose falls? Or will the Hollow's secrets outwit even him? Stay tuned for Chapter 5, where a forgotten witness steps forward, and the truth takes a dangerous turn. What do you think Eliza's diary reveals? Is Julian the killer, or is someone else pulling the strings? Drop your theories in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to catch every twist in Poirot versus the Phantom Killer. See you in the next chapter, where the shadows grow darker and the stakes higher. The Hollow awoke to a morning cloaked in mist, the kind that blurred the edges of the world, making every cottage and tree seem like a specter in a dream. The village, once a haven of pastoral charm, now felt like a trap, its cobblestone paths slick with rain, its air heavy with the scent of damp earth and fear. The village square, where laughter and market chatter once reigned, was a ghost of itself, with only a few brave souls venturing out to buy bread or milk, their eyes scanning the fog for unseen threats. The church's steeple loomed through the haze, its bell tolling a somber note that seemed to mourn Eliza Marwood, Mr. Grayson, and Thomas Reed. Each death marked by a white rose that had turned the Hollow's beauty into a curse. The Rosen Crown, and once a beacon of warmth, was nearly deserted, its windows steamed with condensation, its patrons whispering tales of the Phantom Killer. But within the oak-paneled walls of Ashbourne Manor's library, Hercule Poirot sat, with an air of unshakable resolve, his polished shoes gleaming, his mustache a testament to his precision. Before him lay his growing arsenal of clues: Eliza's diary, with its chilling final entry, Mr. Grayson's letter, hinting at a secret, night the almond scent, suggesting cyanide, and whispers of the White Lady legend tied to an Ashbourne scandal. The phantom, Poirot said, his voice a quiet blade. He hides in plain sight. But Poirot, he sees through the fog. The discovery of Eliza's diary had been a turning point, its pages revealing a secret admirer who had turned from romantic too menacing. Her final words, "I know who he is," suggested she had confronted her killer, a fatal mistake. The letter from Mr. Grayson, with its talk of that night, pointed to a buried truth, while the almond scent and the vial's imprint in Blackthorn Woods hinted at a methodical poisoner. Poirot's suspects Clara Winters, Dr. Harrow, and Julian Ashbourne were entangled in the mystery, each with motives and secrets. Clara's fear suggested she was either a witness or complicit. Dr. Harrow's dismissal of the cyanide scent raised suspicions of negligence or cover-up. And Julian's evasive charm, coupled with his argument with Eliza, made him a prime candidate. The White Lady legend, tied to an Ashbourne scandal, suggested a deeper motive, perhaps rooted in the manor itself. Poirot's 4th day had tightened. The noose, but the killer, remained elusive. On this 5th day, he resolved to find a new witness, someone who had seen what others missed. The truth, he told Lady Margaret over a breakfast of croissants, it is often seen by those who are overlooked. Poirot's first stop was the village post office, a cramped building run by Miss Agnes Finch, a spinster in her 60s known for her sharp eyes and sharper tongue. Agnes was the village's unofficial historian, her memory a vault of the Hollow's comings and goings. Poirot found her sorting letters, her glasses perched on her nose. "Mademoiselle Finch," he began, his charm disarming, "you see all that passes in the Hollow?" Did you see anything unusual the night Eliza Marwood died? Agnes paused. Her lips pursed. I don't gossip, monsieur, she said, but her eyes gleamed with knowledge. After a moment, she leaned closer. That night, I was closing up late, and I saw Eliza heading toward Blackthorn Woods. She wasn't alone. There was a figure with her tall, cloaked, moving fast. Couldn't see a face, but they were arguing, low and fierce. Poirot's pulse quickened. This figure, mademoiselle, did you see them again? Agnes nodded. The night Mr. Grayson died, I saw someone similar near the church, slipping into the shadows. I told Inspector Caldwell, but he said I was imagining things. Poirot's mustache twitched. A cloaked figure, seen twice a witness at last. Buoyed by Annis's account. Poirot revisited Blackthorn Woods, determined to find more evidence of the vial he'd spotted. The woods were a maze of gnarled trees and damp earth, their silence broken only by the rustle of leaves. Poirot moved with care, his eyes scanning the ground near where Eliza's body had been found. The vial's imprint was still there, faint. But distinct, and nearby, he found a crushed leaf with a faint oily residue. Mon Dieu, he murmured, collecting it in a handkerchief. The phantom leaves his mark. The residue smelled faintly chemical, reinforcing his suspicion of cyanide. But how was it administered? No needle marks, no food or drink at the scenes. The killer was clever, perhaps using a method Poirot had yet to uncover. He pocketed the leaf, his mind turning to the cloaked figure. Was it Julian, hiding his identity? Or someone else, using the woods as their stage? Next, Poirot sought out Mrs. Tuttle, the neighbor who'd found Mr. Grayson's body. Her cottage was a mirror of Grayson's, cozy but cluttered, with lace doilies and faded photographs. Mrs. Tuttle was knitting by the fire, her hands trembling as she spoke of Grayson. He was a dear man, monsieur, she said, always sharing his poems. But he'd been troubled lately, said he was writing something important, to set the past right. Poirot leaned forward. This memoir, madame, did he share? Its contents. Mrs. Tuttle shook her head. Only that it was about a wrong done long ago, something to do with the Ashbournes. He was afraid, kept looking out his window, like he expected trouble. Poirot's mind flashed to Grayson's letter, with its talk of that night. Was the memoir the reason he was killed? And where was it now? Mrs. Tuttle added a detail that stopped Poirot cold. The night he died, I heard voices in his garden, 2 men arguing. I looked out, but it was too dark to see. The day grew darker as Poirot returned to Ashbourne Manor to confront Julian Ashbourne again. Julian was in the billiard room, his casual demeanor a stark contrast to the village's tension. Poirot wasted no time. Monsieur Julian, he said, his voice sharp. A witness saw a cloaked figure with Eliza the night she died, and again near Mr. Grayson's home. You argued with Eliza, and you are no stranger to the manor's secrets. Speak, or I shall assume the worst. Julian's charm faltered, his face paling. I wasn't in the woods, Poirot, he insisted. I argued with Eliza, was spreading rumors about me, about my family. I told her to stop, but I didn't hurt her. His voice cracked, and Poirot noted the sweat on his brow. Rumors, monsieur, or truths you wish to bury? Julian stormed out, leaving Poirot with more questions. Was Julian the cloaked figure, or was he protecting someone else? Poirot's next move was to revisit Dr. Harrow, whose surgery was now a focal point of suspicion. The doctor was sterilizing instruments, his movements precise but tense. Poirot said, the almond scent you dismissed is cyanide, and a vial was found in the woods. You, with your knowledge, could administer such a poison without leaving a trace. Harrow's eyes flashed with anger. Are you accusing me, Poirot? I save lives, not take them. But his defensiveness betrayed him. Poirot pressed further, asking about his access to chemicals. Harrow admitted to having cyanide for medical experiments, but swore it was secure. Check my records, he said, thrusting a ledger at Poirot. The ledger showed no discrepancies, but Poirot noted a tremor in Harrow's hand. Was it fear of discovery, or something else? The evening found Poirot at the Rose and Crown, where the innkeeper, Mrs. Doyle, was wiping down the bar. The pub was a shadow of its former self, but Poirot listened to the murmurs of the few patrons present. One, a farmer named Tom Baxter, spoke of a stranger seen in the hollow weeks before Eliza's death, a man who'd asked about the Ashbourne family and the White Lady legend. He was nosy, Baxter said. Kept talking about an old scandal. Something about a girl who died. Poirot's interest piqued. Was this stranger Thomas Reed, or someone else entirely? The White Lady legend, tied to an Ashbourne scandal, was emerging as a thread connecting the victims. Eliza's diary mentioned a man from the manor. Grayson's memoir hinted at a past wrong. Reed had been asking about the legend. Was the killer silencing those who knew too much about a decades-old secret? Back at the manor, Poirot dined with Lady Margaret, who was visibly strained. Over a meal of lamb and mint sauce, he broached the White Lady legend. "Madame," he said, "this tale of a vanished Ashbourne girl, does it hold truth?" Lady Margaret's fork paused midair. "It's an old story," she said, her voice tight. "A cousin, Eleanor, ran off with a man 20 years ago. The family was shamed, and some say she haunts the woods. It's nonsense." But her eyes avoided his, and Poirot sensed a lie. Was Eleanor the key to that night? Was the killer avenging her, or covering her fate? Why? As night settled over the hollow, Poirot sat in the library, the diary in Grayson's. Letter before him. Agnes Finch's cloaked figure, the vial's residue. Mrs. Tuttle's overheard argumental pointed to a killer who was no phantom but a person with a vendetta. The White Lady legend suggested a motive rooted in the Ashbourne family, perhaps tied to Julian or Lady Margaret herself. Clara's fear, Harrow's evasions, Julian's lies, the web was tightening, but the center remained elusive. "The little gray cells," Poirot said, staring into the fire. "They see the shape, but the face is still hidden." The chapter closes with Poirot at a crossroads, the village trembling under the phantom's shadow. A witness has emerged, but her testimony raises new questions. The killer is close, perhaps within the manor's walls, and Poirot knows another. Strike is imminent. In the chapters ahead, he'll uncover a link between the victims' pasts, face a betrayal that shakes his trust, and chase a clue that leads to the heart of the scandal. Can Poirot unmask the phantom before the next rose falls, or will the hollow secrets consume him? Stay tuned for Chapter 6, where a shocking confession turns the case upside down. What do you think the cloaked figure was arguing about? The White Lady legend, the key to the murders. Drop your theories in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to catch every twist in Poirot versus the Phantom Killer. See you in the next chapter, where the truth draws closer and the danger grows. The hollow lay under a shroud of twilight, the kind of evening where the fading light seemed to blur the line between reality and nightmare. The village, once a picture of rural charm with its ivy-clad cottages and blooming hedgerows, now felt like a labyrinth of fear, its cobblestone paths glistening with evening mist. The village square was desolate, its stalls shuttered, the air heavy with the scent of damp leaves and the distant temps of chimney smoke. The church's steeple pierced the fog, its bell silent but ominous, as if mourning the three souls lost. To the phantom killer Eliza Marwood, Mr. Grayson, and Thomas Reed each, marked by a white rose that had transformed the hollow's beauty into a chilling emblem of death. The Rose and Crown Inn, once a hub of laughter and gossip, was a shell of itself. Its few patrons huddled over their drinks, their voices barely above whispers. But within the grand candlelit study of Ashbourne Manor, Hercule Poirot sat with an air of quiet determination, his polished shoes reflecting the firelight, his mustache a testament to his unyielding precision. Before him lay his growing web of clues, Eliza's diary with its haunting final entry, Mr. Grayson's letter, hinting at that night, the almond-scented residue suggesting cyanide, and Agnes Finch's sighting of a cloaked figure. "The phantom," Poirot murmured, his voice steady. "He thinks he is a shadow, but shadows, they always betray their source." Poirot's fifth day in the hollow had brought a breakthrough with Agnes Finch's testimonia. Cloaked figure seen with Eliza and near Grayson's home, arguing in the dark. The diary's revelation that Eliza knew her killer's identity, combined with the chemical residue and the White Lady legend, pointed to a motive rooted in a long-buried scandal, possibly tied to the Ashbourne family. His suspects, Clara Winters, Dr. Harrow, and Julian Ashbourne, remained at the heart of the mystery. Clara's fear suggested she was hiding a truth. Perhaps out of terror or guilt, Dr. Harrow's dismissal of the cyanide sent raised questions of complicity, while Julian's evasive charm and his argument with Eliza hinted at a personal stake, perhaps linked to the manor's secrets. The White Lady legend, with its tale of a vanished Ashbourne girl, was emerging as a key thread, but the killer's motive, revenge, cover-up, or something deeper, remained elusive. On this sixth day, Poirot resolved to shake the village's silence, seeking a confession that might crack the case wide open. The truth, he told Lady Margaret over a breakfast of poached eggs. It hides behind fear, but Poirot, he knows how to coax it out. Poirot began his day at the Rose and Crown, where the innkeeper, Mrs. Doyle, was sweeping the floor, her face etched with exhaustion. The pub was nearly empty, its warmth dimmed by the village's dread. Poirot ordered a lemonade, his preferred drink for clarity, and gently probed Mrs. Doyle about Thomas Reed, the traveling merchant. "Madame," he said, "you mentioned Reed's interest in the White Lady legend. Did he speak of anyone in the village? Perhaps someone he met?" Mrs. Doyle hesitated, then leaned closer. "He was curious about the Ashbournes," she admitted. "Said he'd heard of a scandal from years ago, something about a girl who disappeared. He asked me if Julian Ashbourne was involved, but I told him I didn't know. The night he died, he was nervous, kept looking out the window, like he expected someone." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Reed's questions about Julian and the scandal suggested he'd stumbled onto something dangerous. Was he killed to silence his inquiries? Poirot thanked Mrs. Doyle, his mind already turning to the manor. Next, Poirot visited the church, where Reverend Poole was polishing the altar, his movements slow and deliberate. The vicar's talk of divine retribution had intrigued Poirot, not for its theology, but for what it revealed about the Hollow's secrets. Reverend Poirot said, his voice soft but probing, "You spoke of scenes in the village. This White Lady, this Eleanor Ashbourne, was her disappearance a sin worth killing for?" Poole's hands froze, his face paling. "Eleanor was a tragedy," he said quietly. "She was young, in love with someone beneath her station. The Ashbournes disapproved, and she vanished. Some say she died, others that she fled. But it broke the family, and the village never forgot." Poirot pressed further. "In Mr. Grayson's memoir, did it mention Eleanor?" Poole nodded reluctantly. "He asked me about her, said he was writing about old wounds. I warned him to let it lie, but he wouldn't listen." Poirot's mustache twitched. Grayson's memoir, like Eliza's diary, had threatened to expose a truth someone wanted buried. The afternoon took Poirot to Clara Winters' home, a small cottage near the bakery. Clara was baking, her hands trembling as she shaped loaves, her eyes red from crying. Poirot, sensing her fragility, spoke gently. "Mademoiselle Clara, Eliza's diary says she knew her killer. You were her closest friend. You know who this admirer was. You must tell me, or more will die." Clara's hands stilled, and she sank into a chair, her face crumpling. "I didn't want to believe it," she whispered. "Eliza told me it was someone from the manor, someone she trusted at first. She showed me one note, just one. It was written in a fine hand, like a gentleman's, but it scared her. It said, 'Keep silent, or you'll join her,' I thought." She meant the White Lady. Poirot's heart raced. Join her?
Mademoiselle.
Who wrote this note? Clara shook her head, tears streaming. She wouldn't say, but she was going to confront him that night. Should have stopped her. Poirot placed a hand on her shoulder. "Shh, you have helped her now by speaking. The note, do you have it?" Clara shook her head. She took it with her. Poirot left, his mind ablaze. A threatening note, a gentleman's hand, Julian, or someone else in the manor. Poirot's next stop was Dr. Harrow's surgery, where the doctor was reviewing patient files, his stern face betraying a flicker of unease. Poirot wasted no time. "Doctor," the cyanide residue in the woods, The almond scent on Elise you knew. It was poison, yet you said nothing. Why? Harrow's jaw tightened. I told you I had no proof. Cyanide is rare, and my tests showed nothing conclusive. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. Or perhaps, Doctor, you protect someone. Your access to chemicals, your dismissal of evidence, it is most curious. Harrow stood, his voice rising. I'm no murderer, Poirot. I've served this village for years. But his defensiveness only deepened Poirot's suspicion. As Poirot left, he noticed a locked cabinet in the corner of the surgery, its key dangling from Harrow's pocket. Was it a store of cyanide, or something else? The evening brought Poirot back to Ashbourne Manor, where he sought out Julian Ashbourne. Julian was in the library, reading a novel with forced nonchalance, his fingers tapping nervously. Poirot's approach was direct. Monsieur, Julian, Eliza's diary, and a witness place a cloaked figure with her the night she died. You were seen arguing with her, and Reed asked about your family's scandal. What are you hiding? Julian's face darkened, but his voice was steady. I told you, Poirot, it was a misunderstanding. Eliza was spreading lies about me, about my past. I told her to stop, that's all. Poirot leaned closer. Lies, monsieur. Or truths about Eleanor Ashbourne, the White Lady. Did Eliza know something you feared? Julian stood abruptly, his eyes flashing. You're wrong, Poirot. I'm not your killer. But as he left, Poirot noted a letter on the table, half hidden under a book, in a fine hand similar to Clara's description. He couldn't read it without Julian's notice, but its presence was enough to fuel his suspicions. Dinner with Lady Margaret was tense, the air thick with unspoken questions. Over a meal of beef Wellington, Poirot probed the White Lady legend. Further, Madame Eleanor's disappearance. Did it involve someone in the village? Someone still here? Lady Margaret's fork clattered against her plate. Eleanor was foolish, she said, her voice sharp. She loved a man her father. Forbade a groundskeeper, no less. She ran off, or so we thought. It was a scandal, but it's ancient history. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Ancient, madame. Yet 3 are dead, and the past is very much alive. Lady Margaret excused herself, her face pale, leaving Poirot to ponder. Was Eleanor's lover the key? Was the killer avenging her, or silencing those who knew her fate? As night fell, Poirot sat in the manor's study, the fire casting shadows on the walls. He reviewed his clues. Eliza's diary, Grayson's letter, the cyanide residue, Agnes's cloaked figure, Clara's confession about the note. The White Lady legend was no mere ghost story, it was the heart of the mystery. Someone was killing, to protect or avenge a secret from 20 years ago, and the manor was the epicenter. Julian's evasiveness, Harrow's locked cabinet, Clara's fear all pointed to a conspiracy. But the note keeps silent, or you'll join her, suggested a deeper truth. Was Eleanor dead, and was the killer her avenger? The little gray cells, Poirot said, staring into the flames. They see the web, but the spider remains hidden. Ada closes with Poirot on the brink of a revelation, the village trembling under the phantom's shadow. Clara's confession has tightened the noose, but the killer is still a step ahead. In the chapters to come, Poirot will uncover a link between the victims and Eleanor's fate, face a betrayal within the manor, and chase a clue that leads to a deadly confrontation. Can he unmask the phantom before another rose falls, or will the hollow's secrets bury him? Stay tuned for Chapter 7, where a hidden room reveals a shocking truth. What do you think the note's threat means? Is Julian the cloaked figure, or is someone else orchestrating the murders? Drop your theories in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to catch every twist in Poirot versus the Phantom Killer. See you in the next chapter, where the darkness deepens and the truth emerges. The hollow slumbered uneasily under a sky heavy with storm clouds, the kind that seemed to hold the village in a vice of foreboding. Dawn had barely broken, and the mist clung to the cobblestone lanes like a shroud, blurring the outlines of the thatched cottages and the looming silhouette of Ashbourne Manor. The village, once a beacon of rustic charm with its blooming gardens and cheerful market square, now felt like a stage for a grim drama, its residents moving with the caution of prey. The church's steeple stood sentinel through the fog, its bell silent but heavy with the memory of 3 lives lost. Eliza Marwood, Mr. Grayson, and Thomas Redditch, marked by a white rose that had turned the hollow's beauty into a symbol of dread. The Rose and Crown Inn, once alive with laughter and clinking glasses, was a husk, its few patrons whispering tales of the phantom killer as if speaking too loudly might summon him. But within the oak-paneled study of Ashbourne Manor, Hercule Poirot sat with an air of unyielding focus, his polished shoes catching the flicker of candlelight, his mustache a perfect emblem of his precision. For him lay his arsenal of clues. Eliza's diary, with its chilling revelation, Mr. Grayson's letter, hinting at that night, cyanide-laced residue from Blackthorn Woods, and Clara Winter's confession about a threatening note. The phantom, Poirot murmured, his voice a quiet challenge. He weaves a clever web, but Poirot, he cuts through the threads. The 6th day had brought a seismic shift with Clara's confession that Eliza's secret admirer, a man from the manor, had threatened her to keep silent or join her. The White Lady legend, tied to Eleanor Ashbourne's disappearance 20 years ago, was no mere folklore. It was the heart of the mystery, a scandal that linked the victims. Eliza's diary suggested she knew her killer's identity. Grayson's memoir hinted at a truth worth killing for, and Reed's questions about the Ashbournes had made him a target. Poirot suspects Clara, Dr. Harrow, and Julian Ashbourne were entangled in the web, each with secrets that refused to stay buried. Clara's fear suggested she was a witness, perhaps too terrified to speak fully. Dr. Harrow's dismissal of the cyanide evidence pointed to negligence or complicity. And Julian's evasiveness, coupled with his argument with Eliza, made him a prime suspect. The manor itself, with its whispers of Eleanor's scandal, seemed to hold the key. On this 7th day, Poirot resolved to uncover a physical clue, a hidden space, perhaps, where the secrets of the past were guarded. The truth, he told Lady Margaret over a breakfast of scones and tea. It hides in places forgotten, but Poirot, he remembers. Poirot began his day at Ashbourne Manor, where the air felt thick with unspoken truths. Lady Margaret, her face drawn from sleepless nights, was arranging flowers in the drawing room, her hands trembling as she placed a white rose in a vase, a gesture that made Poirot's eyes narrow. "Madame," he said, his voice gentle, but probing. "This manor, it holds the past like a vault. Tell me of Eleanor Ashbourne's rooms. Were they preserved?" Lady Margaret's hands froze, her eyes darting to the floor. "Eleanor's rooms were sealed after she left," she said, her voice tight. "No one goes there. It's too painful." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Painful, madame, or dangerous?" She offered no answer, but her silence was enough. Poirot requested to see the sealed wing, and after a moment's hesitation, Lady Margaret led him to a locked door in the manor's east corridor, its key heavy in her hand. "No one has entered in years," she said, unlocking it with a trembling hand. The door creaked open, revealing a dusty hallway, its air stale with neglect. The sealed wing was a time capsule, its rooms frozen in the 1910s. Eleanor's bedroom was a portrait of a young woman's life, a four-poster bed with faded lace, vanity cluttered with silver brushes, and a wardrobe filled with dresses that smelled of lavender. But Poirot's, I was drawn to a bookcase, its shelves slightly askew. With a gentle push, he discovered it swung inward, revealing a hidden room no larger than a closet. Inside was a writing desk, its surface covered in dust but bearing a stack of letters tied with a faded ribbon. Poirot's heart raced as he untied them, finding they were written in a feminine hand. "Lenoris, the letters were addressed to my dearest, filled with love and despair. They will tear us apart," one read, "but I will never betray you. Meet me in the woods, where no one will see." The final letter was dated the night Eleanor vanished, its tone desperate. "If I must leave, I will take our secret with me. Forgive me." Poirot's mind whirled. Eleanor had a lover, and their meeting in Blackthorn Woods had ended in tragedy. Was this the night Grayson wrote of? Poirot took the letters to the library, where he spread them out, piecing together Eleanor's story. She had loved a man her family deemed unworthy a groundskeeper, as Lady Margaret had said. The letters suggested a plan to elope, but something had gone wrong. Was Eleanor the White Lady, dead in the woods? Or had she fled, leaving a wound that festered in the hollow? Poirot's next move was to confront Julian Ashbourne, whose connection to the manor made him a likely link to Eleanor's scandal. He found Julian in the garden, pruning roses with a distracted air. "Monsieur Julian," Poirot said, his voice sharp, "Loner Ashbourne's letters speak of a love forbidden, a meeting in the woods. You know this story, oui? And Elise say she knew it too?" Julian's shears paused, his face paling. "I was a child when Eleanor vanished," he said, his voice strained. "It's family history, nothing more. Eliza was meddling, asking questions about things that don't concern her." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Meddling, monsieur. Or uncovering a truth you wished buried." Julian threw down the shears and stormed off, but Poirot noted a letter peeking from his pocket, its handwriting eerily similar to the threatening note Clara described. Next, Poirot visited Dr. Harrow's surgery, determined to investigate the locked cabinet he'd noticed. Harrow was with a patient, but Poirot waited, his patience a weapon. When Harrow emerged, Poirot was direct. "Doctor, your cabinet, does it hold cyanide, perhaps? The residue in the woods suggests a poisoner with access to your tools?" Harrow's face reddened. "You overstep, Poirot. My supplies are secure." But his eyes flicked to the cabinet, and Poirot pressed. "Then open it, doctor, and prove your innocence." Harrow hesitated, then unlocked the cabinet, revealing vials of medicines but no cyanide. Yet Poirot noticed a small gap where a vial might have been, and Harrow's nervous glance confirmed his suspicion. "A missing vial, doctor?" Poirot asked. Harrow stammered. I misplaced one. It's nothing." But Poirot's smile was cold. "Nothing, monsieur, or everything." The afternoon took Poirot to the Rose and Crown, where he sought out Tom Baxter, the farmer who'd mentioned a stranger asking about the Ashbourne scandal. Baxter was nursing a pint, his weathered face tense. "Monsieur Baxter," Poirot said, "this stranger who asked about the Ashbournes, describe him." Baxter frowned. Tall, dark coat, kept to himself. Said he was a historian researching old families. Asked about Eleanor? Said he'd heard she was wronged. "I saw him talking to Reed the day before Reed died." Poirot's pulse quickened. A historian? Or someone with a personal stake? Was this the cloaked figure Agnes Finch saw? The pieces were aligning, Eleanor's letters, the stranger's questions. Reed's death all pointed to a secret the killer was desperate to protect. Back at the manor, Poirot dined with Lady Margaret, the tension palpable over a meal of roasted quail. He broached the hidden room. Madame Eleanor's letters speak of a love that ended in tragedy. Was she killed, or did she flee? Lady Margaret's face crumpled. "She ran off," she insisted, but her voice wavered. "Her father was furious, disowned her. We never heard from her again." Poirot's eyes softened. "And yet, madame, her shadow lingers, and 3 are dead. Who in this manor would kill to keep her secret?" Lady Margaret stood, her voice trembling. "You're digging up ghosts, Poirot. Let them rest." But as she left, Poirot saw fear in her eyes, not just for the village, but for her family. As night fell, Poirot sat in the study. Eleanor's letters spread before him. The hidden room had revealed a love story turned tragedy, and the killer was silencing those who knew it. Eliza's diary, Grayson's memoir, Reed's questions all threatened to expose the truth about that night. The cloaked figure. The missing vial, the threatening note, someone in the hollow, perhaps in the manor, was the phantom. Julian's lies, Harrow's evasions, even Lady Margaret's fear-all pointed to a conspiracy rooted in Eleanor's fate. "The little grey cells," Poirot said, staring into the fire. "They see the past reaching into the present, but the hand that holds the rose is still hidden." The chapter closes with Poirot, closer to the truth, but the phantom remains. Step ahead. The village is a powder keg, its residents gripped by terror, and another death looms. In the chapters ahead, Poirot will uncover a connection between Eleanor and the victims, face a betrayal that shakes his resolve, and chase a clue that leads to a deadly trap. Can he unmask the phantom before the next rose falls, or will the Hollow's secrets claim him? Stay tuned for Chapter 8, where a confrontation in the woods reveals a chilling truth. What do Eleanor's letters mean? Is Julian protecting his family or himself? Drop your theories in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to catch every twist in Poirot versus the Phantom Killer. See you in the next chapter, where the shadows close in and the stakes soar. The Hollow lay under a veil of twilight, the kind of evening where the fading light seemed to pulse with secrets. Casting long shadows across the village's cobblestone lanes, the air was thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth and the faint tang of wood smoke, as if the village itself was holding its breath. Once a haven of pastoral beauty, with its thatched cottages and blooming gardens, the Hollow now felt like a chessboard where every move was a gamble against death. The village square was a ghost town, its market stalls abandoned, the few remaining vendors whispering nervously about the Phantom Killer. The church's steeple loomed through the fog, its bell silent but heavy with the weight of 3 lost souls. Eliza Marwood, Mr. Grayson, and Thomas Redditch, marked by a white rose that had turned the Hollow's charm into a chilling curse. The Rose and Crown Inn, once a beacon of warmth and gossip, was nearly empty, its windows fogged, its patrons speaking in hushed tones as if afraid to wake the shadows. But within the candlelit study of Ashbourne Manor, Hercule Poirot sat with an air of relentless determination, his polished shoes gleaming, his mustache a symbol of his unyielding precision. Before him lay his arsenal of clues, Eliza's diary with its damning final entry, Mr. Grayson's letter hinting at a fateful night, the cyanide-laced residue from Blackthorn Woods, Clara's confession about a threatening note, and Eleanor Ashbourne's letters revealing a tragic love. The Phantom Poirot murmured, his voice a quiet blade. He thinks he is the master of this game, but Poirot, he changes the rules. The discovery of Eleanor's hidden room had been a revelation, her letters painting a picture of a forbidden love that ended in tragedy. The White Lady legend, tied to her disappearance 20 years ago, was no mere ghost story. It was the key to the murders. Eliza's diary suggested she had uncovered her killer's identity. Grayson's memoir threatened to expose a buried truth, and Reed's questions about the Ashbourne scandal had made him a target. Poirot suspects Clara Winters, Dr. Harrow, and Julian Ashbourne were entangled in a web of secrets, each with motives that refused to stay hidden. Clara's fear hinted at knowledge she was too terrified to share. Dr. Harrow's dismissal of the cyanide evidence suggested negligence or complicity. And Julian's evasiveness, coupled with his argument with Eliza and his link to the manor, made him a prime candidate. The threatening note, "Keep silent or you'll join her," pointed to Eleanor's fate as the motive. But whether the killer was avenging her or covering up her death remained unclear. On this 8th day, Poirot resolved to force the Phantom's hand, seeking a confrontation in the very place where the mystery began, Blackthorn Woods. The truth, he told Lady Margaret, over a breakfast of brioche and coffee. It waits in the shadows, and Poirot, he will drag it into the light. Poirot began his day at the manor, where Lady Margaret was pacing the drawing room, her face etched with worry. The discovery of Eleanor's letters had shaken her, and Poirot sensed she knew more than she admitted. "Madame," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "Eleanor's letters speak of a love forbidden, a meeting in the woods that ended in tragedy. Who was her lover, and what became of him?" Lady Margaret's hands trembled as she adjusted a vase of flowers' white roses. Poirot noted with a frown. "Eleanor was reckless," she said, her voice barely audible. "She loved a groundskeeper, Robert Hale. My father forbade it, and she vanished. We assume she ran off with him, but no one knows." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Hale, Madame. The butcher, Mr. Hale, is he related?" Lady Margaret nodded. "His brother, Robert, left the Hollow after Eleanor disappeared. It broke him." Poirot's pulse quickened. The butcher, who'd seen a cloaked figure, was tied to Eleanor's lover. A new thread in the web. Was Hale seeking revenge for his brother's loss? Determined to test this lead, Poirot visited the butcher's shop, where Mr. Hale was chopping meat with a ferocity that spoke of pent-up rage. The shop was quiet, its counter sparse, the air heavy with the scent of blood and sawdust. "Monsieur?" Hercule Poirot said, his charm disarming. "You saw a cloaked figure near the woods. Was it personal, this sighting? Your brother Robert loved Eleanor Ashbourne. Did her fate drive you to watch the shadows?" Hale's cleaver paused, his eyes flashing with anger. "Robert was destroyed when Eleanor vanished," he growled. "The Ashbournes cast him out, called him a nobody, but I'm no killer, Poirot. I saw that figure, yes, but I didn't know him." Poirot noted the tremor in Hale's voice, the way his hands gripped the cleaver. Was it grief or guilt? "And yet," Monsieur Poirot pressed, "you know the woods well. Did you ever find traces of your brother's fate?" Hale's face darkened, and he turned away. "Leave it, Poirot. Some things are better buried." Poirot left. His suspicions deepened. Hale's pain was real, but was it motive enough for murder? Next, Poirot returned to Blackthorn Woods, the heart of the mystery. The woods were a tangle of shadows, their branches whispering in the wind, their earth soft from recent rain. Poirot retraced the path to where Eliza's body was found, his eyes scanning for new clues. Near the vial's imprint, he noticed a patch of disturbed soil, as if recently dug. With a stick, he probed the earth, uncovering a small metal box, rusted, but intact. Inside was a locket, engraved with ENR Eleanor and Robert, he presumed. The locket held a faded photograph of a young woman, unmistakably an Ashbourne, her eyes bright with hope. Poirot's heart raced. Had Eleanor been killed here, her locket buried to hide the truth, or had she left it as a final message? The woods, with their connection to the White Lady legend, were more than a crime scene. They were a graveyard of secrets. Poirot's next stop was Dr. Harrow's surgery, where he hoped to confront the doctor about the missing cyanide vial. Harrow was sterilizing instruments, his movements tense, his stern face betraying unease. Dr. Poirot said, his voice sharp, "A vial is missing from your cabinet, and cyanide was found in the woods. You knew Eliza's death was no accident, yet you lied." "Why?" Harrow's hands froze, his eyes narrowing. "I'm no liar, Poirot. I told you, my tests were inconclusive. If a vial is missing, it was stolen." Poirot leaned closer. "Stolen, monsieur? Or taken by one who knows your secrets? Who has access to your surgery?" Harrow's face reddened, but he offered no names. Poirot noticed a photograph on the desk, younger Harrow with a woman resembling Eleanor. "An old friend, doctor?" Poirot asked. Harrow snatched the photo away. "My sister," he snapped. "She's long gone." Poirot's mustache twitched. Another connection to the past? Another lie? The afternoon found Poirot at the Rose, in Crown, where Tom Baxter, the farmer, was sharing a pint with other locals. Poirot joined them, his lemonade a stark contrast to their ales. "Monsieur Baxter," he said, "you spoke of a stranger asking about the Ashbourne scandal. Did he mention Robert Hale? Or Eleanor?" Baxter frowned, scratching his beard. "Didn't name names, but he said the Ashbournes ruined someone, drove them out. He was angry, kept saying justice was coming. I saw him with Reed whispering like they were plotting." Poirot's mind raced. Was the stranger an avenger targeting those who knew of Eleanor's fate? Was he the cloaked figure, or a red herring? The pub's whispers grew louder, tales of the White Lady mingling with fear of the phantom. And Poirot sensed the village's panic nearing a breaking point. Back at Ashbourne Manor, Poirot sought Julian Ashbourne, determined to confront him. About the letter in his pocket. He found Julian in the billiard room, his charm fraying under Poirot's scrutiny. "Monsieur Julian," Poirot said, "note in your hand matches the one that threatened Eliza. You knew of Eleanor's scandal, and Eliza's questions threatened you. Speak, or I shall assume you are the phantom." Julian's face paled, his hands trembling. "I wrote no threats," he insisted. "Yes, I knew Eliza was digging into family history, asking about Eleanor. I told her to stop, but I didn't kill her." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Then show me the letter, monsieur." Julian hesitated, then produced a note-knot. A threat, but a love letter to Eliza, begging her to meet him. "I cared for her," Julian admitted, his voice breaking. But she was obsessed with the past, said she'd expose the truth about Eleanor. Poirot's heart sank. Was Julian a lover or a liar? Dinner with Lady Margaret was a study in tension, the air thick with unspoken fears. Over a meal of venison, Poirot probed further. Madame Eleanor's locket was found in the woods, buried. Like a secret. Was she killed or did she flee? Lady Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I don't know, she whispered. Father said she ran off, but Robert Hale swore she'd never leave him. He accused us of worse, but he had no proof. Poirot's mind whirled. Was Robert Hale the key, his brother seeking vengeance? Or was the killer closer, within the manor's walls? As night fell, Poirot sat in the study, the locket and letters before him. The woods had yielded a relic of Eleanor's love, but the killer remained a shadow. Hale's grief, Harrow's sister, Julian's letter all pointed to a conspiracy. Tied to Eleanor's fate, the phantom was no ghost, but a calculated mind, silencing those who threatened to unearth the truth. The little gray cells, Poirot said, staring into the fire. They see the past bleeding into the present, but the phantom's face is still veiled. The chapter closes with Poirot on the edge of a breakthrough, the village trembling under the phantom's threat. The locket has deepened the mystery, and a confrontation looms. In the chapters ahead, Poirot will uncover a final link between the victims, face a betrayal that shakes his trust, and chase the phantom into a deadly trap. Can he unmask the killer before another rose falls, or will the hollow secrets consume him? Stay tuned for Chapter 9, where a midnight discovery changes everything. What does the locket reveal? Is Julian a victim or the phantom? Drop your theories in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to catch every twist in Poirot versus the Phantom Killer. See you in the next chapter, where the truth emerges and the danger peaks. The hollow lay cloaked in a darkness so thick it seemed to swallow the stars, the kind of night where the village felt like a forgotten corner of the world. The air was heavy with the scent of rain and pine, the cobblestone lanes glistening under, the faint glow of lanterns that flickered like nervous heartbeats. Once a haven of pastoral charm, with its ivy-draped cottages and vibrant gardens, the hollow now felt like a stage set for a final act, its residents moving with the wariness of those who knew they were being watched. The village square was deserted, its market stalls abandoned, the silence broken only by the occasional creak of a shutter in the wind. The church's steeple loomed through the fog, a silent sentinel over the graves of Eliza Marwood, Mr. Grayson, and Thomas Reed, each marked by a white rose that had turned the hollow's beauty into a chilling omen. The Rose and Crown Inn, once alive with laughter and gossip, was a shadow of itself, its windows dark, its few patrons whispering of the phantom killer as if his name alone could summon death. But within the candlelit library of Ashbourne Manor, Hercule Poirot sat with an air of unshakable resolve at P, his polished shoes catching the firelight, his mustache a symbol of his relentless precision. Before him lay his arsenal of clues, Eliza's diary, with its damning revelation, Mr. Grayson's letter hinting at a fateful night, the cyanide-laced residue from Blackthorn Woods, Eleanor's letters revealing a tragic love, and the locket found buried in the woods. The phantom, Poirot murmured, his voice a quiet challenge. He believes he is untouchable. But Poirot, he closes the net. The discovery of Eleanor's locket had tightened the web of the mystery, linking the murders to a scandal 20 years old. Eliza's diary revealed she knew her killer's identity. Grayson's memoir threatened to expose a buried truth, and Reed's questions about the Ashbourne family had made him a target. The White Lady legend, tied to Eleanor's disappearance, was no mere tale. It was the heart of the killings, a secret someone was desperate to keep buried. Poirot's suspects, Clara Winters, Dr. Harrow, and Julian Ashbourne were entangled in a web of lies and motives. Clara's fear suggested she was a witness, perhaps too terrified to speak fully. Dr. Harrow's dismissal of the cyanide evidence hinted at complicity or negligence. And Julian's evasiveness, coupled with his love letter to Eliza and his ties to the manor, made him a prime suspect. The revelation that Robert Hale, the brother of the butcher, was Eleanor's forbidden lover, added a new layer could Mr. Howell be avenging his brother's loss? On this 9th day, Poirot resolved to force the phantom into the open, seeking a midnight discovery that would reveal the killer's face. The truth, he told Lady Margaret over a breakfast of croissants. And tea, it hides in the dark. But Poirot, he carries the light. Poirot began his day at the manor, where the air was thick with tension. Lady Margaret was in the drawing room, her hands fidgeting with a lace handkerchief, her face pale from the strain of the past week.
All right.
Poirot's discovery of Eleanor's locket had shaken her, and he sensed she was on the verge of breaking. Madame, he said, his voice gentle but insistent. The locket proves Eleanor's fate was no simple elopement. Was she killed in the woods? And by whom? Lady Margaret's eyes filled with tears, her voice barely audible. I don't know, monsieur. Father swore she ran off with Robert Hale, but there were rumors, dark ones, that she never left the hollow. I was young. I believed him. Poirot's gaze softened. And Robert Hale, madame, did he ever return? She shook her head. He left after Eleanor vanished, broken. His brother, Mr. Hale, never forgave us. Poirot's mind raced. The butcher's grief was a motive, but was it enough to kill 3 people? Determined to follow this lead, Poirot visited Mr. Hale's butcher shop. The air was sharp with the scent of blood and sawdust. Hale was behind the counter, his cleaver moving with a rhythm that spoke of suppressed rage. Monsieur Hale, Poirot said, his charm disarming. Your brother loved Eleanor Ashbourne, and her loss destroyed him. What did you seek justice for? Him in the woods? Hale's cleaver paused, his eyes blazing. Justice. The Ashbournes ruined Robert, cast him out like garbage. But I'm no murderer, Poirot. I saw that cloaked figure. Yes, but it wasn't me. Poirot pressed further. And yet, monsieur, you know the woods well. Did you ever find traces of Eleanor or Robert? Hale's face darkened, his voice low. I found nothing but pain. Leave it, Poirot, or you'll end up like the others. The threat hung in the air, but Poirot's smile was unshaken. Hale's anger was real, but was it the anger of a killer? Next, Poirot returned to Blackthorn Woods, determined to uncover more evidence. The woods were a labyrinth of shadows, their branches whispering secrets in the evening breeze. Poirot moved carefully, his eyes scanning the ground near the lockets. Burial site. Near a gnarled oak, he found a patch of earth recently disturbed, as if someone had been digging. With a small trowel, he unearthed a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Inside was a journal, its pages brittle but legible, written in a masculine hand, Robert Hale's, Poirot presumed. The entries detailed his love for Eleanor, their plan to elope, and a fateful meeting in the woods. The final entry was chilling. They know. They'll never let us be. If I don't return, look to the manor. Poirot's heart raced. Robert had suspected foul play, and his journal pointed to someone in Ashbourne Manor. Was this the truth? Grayson's memoir threatened to reveal? Poirot took the journal to the Rose and Crown, where he sought Tom Baxter, the farmer who'd spoken of a stranger asking about the Ashbourne scandal. The pub was nearly empty, its warmth dimmed by fear. Baxter was at a corner table, his face weathered by worry. Monsieur Baxter, Poirot said, this stranger who spoke of the Ashbournes, did he mention Robert Hale? Baxter nodded slowly. He said the Ashbournes' wronged a man, drove him out, called it a crime covered up by money. He was with Reed the night before Reed died, talking low like they were planning something. Poirot's pulse quickened. The stranger was no historian but an avenger. Perhaps Robert Hale himself returned after 20 years. Or was he a relative, seeking justice? The journal suggested Robert never left the Hollow. Had he been killed, like Eleanor? Back at the manor, Poirot confronted Julian Ashbourne, whose charm was fraying under the weight of suspicion. Julian was in the garden, staring. At the roses, his hands clenched. Monsieur Julian, Poirot said, his voice sharp. Robert Hale's journal speaks of a betrayal in the woods, and Eliza knew of it. Your love letter to her was no mere affectionate, was a plea to keep silent. Julian's face paled, his voice shaking. I loved Eliza, Poirot, but she was obsessed with Eleanor's story. She found papers in the manor, said they proved a crime. I begged her to stop, but I didn't kill her. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Papers, monsieur. Where are they? Julian hesitated, then led Poirot to a locked drawer in the library, revealing a single documental letter from Eleanor's father threatening Robert Hale with ruin if he didn't leave. Eliza found this, Julian admitted, she said. It proved murder. Poirot's mind whirled. The letter was damning, but was Julian protecting his family or himself? Poirot's final stop was Dr. Harrow's surgery, where he confronted the doctor about the missing cyanide vial. Poirot was cleaning his desk, his stern face tense. Dr. Poirot said, Robert Hale's journal suggests a crime covered up by the Ashbournes. Your sister, in that photograph, was she tied to Eleanor? Harrow's hands froze, his voice low. My sister, Mary, was Eleanor's friend. She knew about Robert, tried to help them. She left the hollow after Eleanor vanished, couldn't? Bear the grief, Poirot pressed. And the cyanide, doctor?
As.
Was it used to silence those who knew? Harrow's eyes flashed. I told you it was stolen. I'm no killer. But his trembling hands betrayed him, and Poirot noted a faint almond scent in the air, as if a vial had been opened recently. As midnight approached, Poirot sat in the manor's library, the journal and letter before him. The discovery of Robert's journal had shifted the puzzle, pointing to a murder covered up by the Ashbournes. Eleanor and Robert, betrayed in the woods, their deaths hidden by wealth and power. Eliza, Grayson, and Reed had uncovered pieces of this truth, and the phantom silenced them. The cloaked figure, the cyanide, the white roses all pointed to someone in the manor, someone tied to Eleanor's fate. Julian's letter, Harrow's sister, Hale's grief. The web was tightening, but the killer's face remained veiled. The little gray cells, Poirot said, staring into the fire. They see the past screaming for justice, but the phantom's hand is still hidden. The chapter closes with Poirot on the brink of unmasking the killer, the village trembling. Under the phantom's shadow, the journal has revealed a crime, but the truth is still out of reach. In the final chapter, Poirot will confront the phantom in a deadly showdown, uncover the final piece of the puzzle, and reveal the face behind. The white roses? Can he stop the killer before another life is lost, or will the hollow secrets claim him? Stay tuned for Chapter 10, where the phantom's mask falls and the truth is laid bare. Who is the cloaked figure? Is Julian the killer or a pawn? Drop your theories in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to catch the thrilling conclusion of Poirot versus the Phantom Killer. See you in the final chapter, where the shadows part and justice prevails. The hollow lay under a moonless sky, the kind of night where darkness seemed to seep into the very soul of the village, cloaking its cobblestone lanes and thatched cottages in an oppressive gloom. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and the faint bitterness of ash, as if the village itself was mourning its lost innocence. Once a haven of pastoral charm, with its blooming gardens and lively market square, the hollow now felt like a battlefield, its residents cowering behind. Locked doors, their whispers of the phantom killer barely audible over the wind's mournful howl. The church's steeple stood silent, a stark reminder of the graves holding Eliza Marwood, Mr. Grayson, and Thomas Reed, each marked by a white rose that had turned beauty into terror. The Rosencrown Inn, once the heart of village life, was a hollow shell, its windows dark, its few patrons speaking in hushed tones as if fearing the phantom's presence. But within the grand firelit library of Ashbourne Manor, Hercule Poirot sat with an air of resolute finality, his polished shoes gleaming, his mustache a testament to his unyielding precision. Before him lay the culmination of his investigation, Eliza's diary, revealing her knowledge of her killer. Mr. Grayson's letter, hinting at a fateful night. The cyanide-laced residue from Blackthorn Woods. Clara's confession about a threatening note. Eleanor's letters, exposing a tragic love. Robert Hale's journal, pointing to a crime. And a letter from Eleanor's father, threatening ruin. The phantom, Poirot murmured, his voice a quiet triumph. he has played his final move. But Poirot, he claims checkmate. The discovery of Robert Hale's journal had been the key that unlocked the mystery, revealing a love betrayed and a crime covered up by the Ashbourne family. Eleanor's disappearance 20 years ago was no elopement. She and Robert had been betrayed, likely killed, to protect the family's honor. Eliza's diary showed she had uncovered this truth. Grayson's memoir threatened to expose it, and Reed's questions about the scandal had sealed his fate. Poirot suspects Clara Winters, Dr. Harrow, and Julian Ashbourne were entangled in a web of motives, but the journal and the threatening note keep silent. Or you'll join her pointed to someone in the manor, someone tied to Eleanor's fate. Clara's fear suggested she was a witness, too terrified to speak fully. Dr. Harrow's dismissal of the cyanide evidence hinted at complicity. And Julian's love letter to Eliza, combined with his evasive charm, made him a prime suspect. The butcher, Mr. Hale, carried the grief of his brother Robert, but was it enough to kill? On this 10th day, Poirot resolved to confront the phantom in a final showdown, gathering the suspects in the manor to unmask the killer, the truth. He told Lady Margaret over a breakfast of toast and marmalade. It will be revealed tonight, and the phantom will hide no longer. Poirot began his day by revisiting Blackthorn Woods, where the mystery had begun. The woods were a labyrinth of shadows, their branches clawing at the sky, their earth soft with secrets. Poirot stood at the spot where Eliza's body was found, then moved to where Robert's journal and Eleanor's locket had been buried. The ground was disturbed, as if someone had returned recently. Kneeling, he found a fresh white rose, its petals pristine, placed deliberately in the soil. "Aha!" Poirot murmured. "The phantom taunts me." The rose was a message, a sign the killer knew Poirot was closing in. He pocketed it, his mind racing. The cyanide, the cloaked figure, the buried relics all pointed to a killer who staged their crimes with theatrical precision. Someone with access to the manor and the woods. Was it Julian, protecting his family's name? Harrow, hiding a darker truth? Or someone else lurking in the shadows? Next, Poirot visited Clara Winters at the bakery, where she was kneading dough with trembling hands, her eyes red from sleepless nights. The bakery was empty, its warmth gone, the air heavy with flour and fear. "Mademoiselle Clara," Poirot said, his voice gentle but firm, "you knew Eliza's killer was tied to the manor. The note you saw, describe it again."
That is...
Hands stilled, her voice a whisper. It was fine paper, like the manor's stationery, written in black ink, a gentleman's hand. It said she'd die if she spoke of Eleanor. Poirot leaned closer. "And you never saw the writer?" Clara shook her head, tears falling. "I swear I don't know who it was. But Eliza said it was someone she trusted, someone close." Poirot's pulse quickened. The manor's stationery narrowed the field. Julian, or perhaps Lady Margaret herself. He thanked Clara, urging her to stay safe, knowing the killer might target her next. Poirot's next stop was Dr. Harrow's surgery, where the doctor was, organizing his desk, his stern face betraying a flicker of panic. "Dr. Poirot said, his voice sharp, your sister knew Eleanor, and you dismissed the cyanide evidence. The missing vial, the almond scent, did you supply the phantom?" Harrow's eyes flashed with anger. "I told you, Poirot, it was stolen. My sister left the Hollow years ago, heartbroken over Eleanor's fate. I'm no killer." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "Then why, monsieur, do I smell almonds in your surgery today?" Harrow froze, his face paling. Perhaps a spill. But his trembling hands betrayed him, and Poirot noticed a vial on the shelf. Its label smudged but faintly legible. Cyanide. "Careless, doctor," Poirot said, "for a man who claims innocence." Harrow collapsed into a chair, his voice breaking. "I didn't kill them, Poirot, but I knew it was poison. I was afraid of who might be next." Poirot's suspicions deepened. Was Harrow a pawn, or the mastermind? The afternoon found Poirot at the Rose and Crown, where Tom Baxter was nursing a pint, his weathered face tense. "Monsieur Baxter," Poirot said, "the stranger you saw with Reed, did he resemble anyone in the village?" Baxter frowned, scratching his beard. He was tall, dark-haired, kept his face hidden, but his voice. It reminded me of someone from years ago, someone who left the Hollow. Maybe Robert Hale, but I thought he was dead. Poirot's heart raced. Robert Hale alive? Or an imposter, using his name to exact revenge? The journal suggested Robert was killed, but what if he'd survived, returning to punish the Ashbournes? Poirot thanked Baxter, his mind whirling with possibilities. Back at Ashbourne Manor, Poirot prepared for the evening's confrontation. He requested Lady Margaret to gather Julian, Dr. Harrow, Mr. Hale, and Clara in the drawing room, announcing he would reveal the Phantom's identity. The manor was a hive of tension, its halls echoing with the creak of old wood. As the suspects arrived, their faces were a study in fear and defiance. Lady Margaret sat rigidly, her hands clasped. Julian's charm was gone, his eyes darting. Harrow's stern facade cracked, Hale's anger simmered. Clara trembled, clutching a shawl. Poirot stood before them, his presence commanding. "Mes amis," he began. "The Phantom Killer is no ghost, but a person in this room, driven by a secret from 20 years ago.
Oh.
Eleanor Ashbourne and Robert Hale were betrayed, likely killed, in Blackthorn Woods. Eliza, Grayson, and Reed uncovered this truth, and the Phantom silenced them with cyanide and white roses." Poirot paced, his voice rising. Eliza's diary revealed she knew her killer, a man from the manor. Grayson's memoir threatened to expose the crime, and Reed's questions endangered the secret. The locket, the journal, the threatening note-all point to one person. He turned to Julian. "Monsieur Julian, you loved Eliza, but begged her to keep silent. Your family's honor was at stake." Julian stood, his voice shaking. "I didn't kill her, Poirot." Poirot then faced Harrow. "Doctor, you hid the cyanide evidence, fearing for your sister's memory." Harrow shook his head, mute. Finally, Poirot turned to Mr. Hale. "Monsieur Hale, your brother's loss drove you to rage, but was it enough to kill?" Hale's fists clenched, but he said nothing. Then Poirot's eyes softened. "But the true Phantom is not among you." He turned to Lady Margaret, whose face was ashen. "Madame, you knew Eleanor's fate. Your father killed her and Robert to protect the Ashbourne name, and you covered it up. When Elisa found the letter, Grayson wrote his memoir and read Ask Questions. You poisoned them, using cyanide from Harrow's surgery, staging the roses to mimic the White Lady legend." Lady Margaret gasped, her hands trembling. "Poirot, I couldn't." But her eyes betrayed her, and Poirot produced the manor's stationery, matching the threatening note. "You wrote this, madame, to silence Eliza. The cloaked figure was you, hiding your guilt." Lady Margaret collapsed, sobbing. "I had to protect the family. They would have ruined us." The room was silent, the truth laid bare. Poirot called for Inspector Caldwell, who arrested Lady Margaret, her confession echoing in the manor. The Hollow was free, but its scars remained. As dawn broke, Poirot stood in the garden, a white rose in his hand. "The little gray cells," he said, "they always find the truth." The chapter closes with the Phantom unmasked, the Hollow beginning to heal. Poirot's genius has triumphed, but the village will never be the same. Thank you for joining this thrilling journey. What did you think of the twist? Did you suspect Lady Margaret? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to catch more mysteries with Poirot versus the Phantom Killer. See you in the next adventure.